She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
Okay, Ben Azadi, I've been chasing you down. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. You are so stinking popular because you're Mr. Keto Kamp. So tell me, I know your story, but people may get a tear in their eye when you tell how you turned your life around. So bring your story to me.
Lisa, thank you. I admire your work, and it's an honor to be on your show today. Thank you so much. Yeah, my story, like many people who are kind of going through this right now, is a story of somebody who followed a failed conventional approach of the standard American diet, which we know is highly processed. I didn't know any better growing up. As I was mentioning to you offline, my parents were born in Iran. I was born here in America. And they came to America, and we all followed the standard American diet approach. And my mom worked 3 jobs. Parents got divorced because they had an arranged marriage in Iran, then got divorced here in America. So I was pretty much left to my own devices growing up. There's pros to that because I had complete freedom, but then there's cons to it because I didn't really have anybody at home to teach me what's right versus what's wrong. So I hung out with the wrong crowd. The friends I had growing up were drug dealers and people who are very unhealthy, and you become your environment, and I became my environment. So I became very unhealthy too, to the point where I was one of those kids growing up who was very low self-confidence. I never took off my shirt, even though I went to the beach all the time. I live in Miami Beach. I was bullied and picked on. I was depressed. I was physically obese and mentally obese as well. And nothing changed as I was a kid. That's how I was as a teenager. And I graduated high school, went to college. And then I found myself back in 2008 at a really low point of my life. I was 24 years old. My girlfriend at that time, we were together for about 4 years. She ended up leaving the relationship because all I wanted to do was play video games. And she left me, and I was devastated. And that's kind of an understatement. I was destroyed, distraught, and broken, ready to just give up on life. I was on the internet looking for ways to end my life many, many times. I was tired of hurting every day, crying every single day. I was very unhealthy. At that point, I weighed 250 pounds. And every time, Lisa, I explored suicide, the first thought that popped in my mind was, what kind of devastation would your mom have to deal with if you took your life? And I didn't want to do that to her. I just kept thinking about my mom, who's my superhero, and she still is to this day. So it stopped me, but it was a vicious cycle. And it wasn't until a few months into that whole going to explore suicide and stopping myself back and forth, a few months into that, a friend of mine handed me a book. 2 friends that are best friends of mine that are now married, they said, read this book. I really think it's going to help you in this difficult time you're dealing with. So I actually read the book. And 1 book led to 5 books, 5 books led to 20 books. And I just became obsessed, really just obsessed with these incredible authors like Bob Proctor and Dr. Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins. And
so it's
incredible,
changing
amazing
the way
authors.
you thought. It was mindset for you, right?
Mostly mindset. It was not even nutrition to begin with. Yeah, 100% actually mindset in the beginning. So I started to really focus in on my thoughts. And the books did so much for me. But the number one thing that it did for me, and this is what I hope for the world, especially here in America, is the books helped me take responsibility. And that is the starting point for everything. That word responsibility, I believe most people don't even understand what that word means. And my definition is this: that is your ability to respond to life, your responsibility. My ability to respond to life until that point was poor. I was the victim, Lisa. Of course, I'm obese. I've got the genes for it. My dad is type 2 diabetic, and he's overweight. I got those genes. I'm from, the Middle East, the Asia area. We spoke about that. Of course, I got the genes, and I blame that. I blame my slow metabolism and my enabling family members. But the second I took responsibility is the second all that went out the window, and I became the victor of my future and my destiny, and I stopped being the victim of my history. And that was the starting point where I started to move my body and eat better. And I went through this incredible health transformation where I lost 80 pounds in about 9 months, and I went from 34% body fat to 6% body fat. And that's where it all started for me. And then I became just a student, very curious, and I started to study health and nutrition. And that was about 14 years ago, and I've been in this game ever since then.
Was keto in our nomenclature in 2008?
It was kind of scattered out there, but I didn't do it with keto. So I did it with severe exercise, extreme exercise, calorie counting, low fat, So I lost the weight, but I was still one of those fit, sick people, and I was still exploring what true health felt like. But it was a starting point, and it opened up a whole new door for me to kind of figure out what health really looked like and felt like.
Because wouldn't you say now the last thing we want anyone to do is extreme dieting, low fat, and a lot of exercise? I mean, because of the cortisol, the damage it does to our cortisol and then makes us fatter and hungrier. So now, of course, you were 24, and I will say, age was on my side. I was adorable at 24. At 60, I have to work harder and different in order to achieve the same results. And for me, it's not more exercise. So what does that look like for you today? I can't do math, but is that 16 years or 17 years later? 15?
Yeah, it's about 14 years ago. Okay. 14, 15 years. Yeah, so definitely would not teach it that way, as I learned about cellular metabolism. Because to your point, not only is it just extreme, it's a distraction, because cutting calories is a distraction from what really matters, which is inflammation of your cells and membrane and hormone health. That should have been my main focus, and it eventually was, because just because somebody's fit and has six-pack abs like I did does not mean they're healthy. They could be really looking good on the outside and be really unhealthy on the inside. So there's a right way to go about it. And I'm not denying that calories have its place, but I'm saying it's not important. It's very far down on that list of priorities.
So in the 9 months, you lose this weight, you go back to the beach, and you're like, I'm an Adonis. Like, you're killing it. Did you get a girlfriend again? Did you change some things, personally? Did you get the job of your dreams? What did you do then that helped? Because something else helped you soar. And I know mindset was one of it. And I know being in better physical condition. But there was something else that gave you the confidence to go, you know what? I'm going to be the Keto Kamp guy of the solar system.
That's great. Well, it's funny because it's interesting that although I was very lean at 6% body fat and I had six-pack abs, I still had the mindset of an obese man. It took me about 2 years
I've heard
for that to
people
catch
say
up.
that. So explain to me because I've never walked that path of being really overweight. So tell me what people who have gastric bypass will always say. Oh, I still look at myself in the mirror and I see or think like an obese person. So tell me what that means.
Yeah, well, there's a great book called Cybernetics from Maxwell Maltz, which is all about what you're just asking here. And he was a plastic surgeon, and he saw the same thing. Although he would fix, facial features that were like big, long noses, scars, etc. He would fix that. They would still see it in the mirror and feel like they still had it, even after the surgery, because everybody has this set point, and it's their self-image. So it wasn't until I started working on my self-image that it started to match actually how I looked. And that was a result of just reading more books and becoming really conscious and aware of my thoughts. And that took about 2 years. There was one really good book that's a really small book, because I was still kind of going in and out of depression after that point. Mm-hmm. And I read this book. It's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depended on It. I don't know how I came across it, but I read it. And it was all about your thoughts and affirmations. And that was like the starting point for me to really develop a stronger self-image. And then ever since then, I'm still working on it till this day.
What was your vocational interest at that age? I mean, I know you went to college and majored in video games, but what did your parents think you were doing with the money with your degree?
It's funny because I was pretty damn good in video games.
I understand.
Kind of like I had a major in it. I at that time when I went through my transformation, I was working at a packing and shipping store as a manager. And then I went and I got through my transformation, and then I started having a lot of people ask me, how did I do it? So I started doing personal training for them, and I eventually left my job to become a full-time personal trainer, where I would just travel to clients, train them. That evolved into me learning more about nutrition and getting certified as a health coach with Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, FDN. But that was the pivot. I've never had a corporate job. That was like my only 9-to-5 job. But after I went through my transformation, that evolved into a career in the health space.
Well, I know how you feel about the thing that makes my life better, intermittent fasting. I know how you feel about it. But I have to fight the gym rats at my gym who are still telling my clients to eat 5 and 6 times a day. So were you an outlier then, or were you following that mantra?
I was following that mantra for a few years. I was teaching people. I used to do seminar. I used to own a CrossFit gym That was part of my story. And I used to do seminars at my CrossFit gym. I used to call it the science of fat loss, where I used to teach them how to count their macros and calories over macros, and teach them how to get into this deficit. And it doesn't matter if you eat 5 to 20 times a day as long as you're in a deficit. So I was definitely in the wrong camp, and I figured out that I was doing my community a big disservice. So I made a pivot.
That you admit it really brings your name to the forefront where people can back you, because the people I argue with here will still say, don't believe Lisa Fisher, she's wrong. You should eat 5 or 6 times a day. You shouldn't skip breakfast, or whatever I'm helping a client with. So I have the people that I know who haven't really opened their eyes to this. I mean, aren't we all about trust the science? But truly, this kind of science, this is the science that I'm on the side of, because Dr. Fauci's not involved with this. He gets involved with this, and then I'm probably going to jump ship. But my point is, so what year was that you started realizing this time-restricted eating, it kind of works?
It was in 2013, 2014. That's when I discovered intermittent fasting and keto at the same time. I was actually transitioning from a vegan diet because I went down that rabbit hole. I was a vegan for 1.5 years, and it did not work. And then I started to research intermittent fasting and keto. When was it that you discovered intermittent fasting?
2017. My son, who is really good on the video games, was an engineering student at LSU and would make these long drives back to Little Rock. And he would listen to a podcast with Jen Stevens about intermittent fasting. I ended up being friends with Jen now, but he was doing keto. So he was doing it because he wasn't a D1 athlete, because engineers aren't on the football team, as you probably know. They do all the intramural stuff. So as an intramural athlete, he would bring the intel back and say, hey, all these guys are, and we were about to go to the Olympics too. We were going to the Olympics in 2018 in Rio. And my son said, hey, these guys that I play on the intramural football team, because, he looks like an athlete, he's 6'3", 210, physically fit, cut. But he said they're doing keto and intermittent fasting. So that was kind of the first time I'd heard keto, but then fasting, I had to say, well, you've lost your mind, because we all know I have to eat 19 times a day because I have low blood sugars, what I told him, and I'm a thyroid patient. So, I was so defensive immediately. And he said, Mom, I don't get a commission. I'm just telling you. Because I said, why are you telling me this? I said, do you think your mother needs to lose weight? Do you think your mother's fat? Because if so, you won't see your 21st birthday, because he was 20. I'm a really encouraging mother. See. And he said, no, I'm telling you because you are concerned about health. I go, what does fasting have to do with? My face made that look. What does fasting have to do with health? And he sat down, he goes, well, let me tell you some things that I'm learning. And so that it totally, the blinders lifted. And I just started, my story is he didn't give me any other options. He said, it was 6:30 at night. He goes, well, don't eat again until tomorrow at 12:30. I go, okay. And that was it. And now my clients, I'm a little walk more gingerly into the path, because people panic if they think they can't have their candy coffee in the morning, like breathing into a paper bag. I can't do it. So when he told me about it, because he was keto first. So I knew he came from if I'm going to drink, I'll have a vodka, but his challenge was in Baton Rouge, it's all things fried, because they love fried crawfish. They love fried shrimp. So he would be one of the few, and his roommates, they were all engineers who lived together, and they would be the ones that would have the boiled crawfish and the boiled, and they didn't drink the beer. So that's the first time I'd heard about keto. But I will say, and I've heard Jen Stevens say this too, when I first looked at keto, and so this was 5 or 6 years ago, I was probably about 54, 55. I probably just started going, I was probably menopausal then, or perimenopausal. I don't know if it has something to do with hormones, but I remember not feeling satisfied. And now as a carnivore, I have high satiety. So what do you think flipped my switch? What do you think it's a difference in those two, even though they're very similar? But there's something about carnivore that gives me such complete satiety that I never look to snack. I never look for something sugary. What do you think it is?
I feel the same way when I do carnivore. I almost feel like I undereat some days because I'm just so full. Tend to do OMAD, right? And
Yeah.
I don't want to do too much OMAD. So I think it's a combination of a few things. You increase your protein, and we know how satisfying animal protein is.
Yeah.
It activates cholecystokinin, leptin, peptide YY.
I say that all the time. I like my tail wags because Dr. Fung taught us this. And
Yes.
I've done a deep dive into cholecystokinin, and I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you get with protein. And naturally,
Yes.
when you do carnivore, you're going to eat more protein and you'll get that effect. And I mean, technically, carnivore is keto because
Yeah,
most people, unless you're
it
doing
is.
it with like the fruit, you're going to be in ketosis. So it is different though, because you're kind of decreasing some of your fat and focusing on protein. I think that's the biggest reason why you felt, and a lot of people, even myself, feel satiated because
Yes.
you can't really overeat protein. It's so satisfying, but you can overeat fat and you can overeat, especially carbohydrates. So I
Yes,
think it's
for
the
sure.
protein that's the key there.
I do think sometimes I battle personally because of we learned that cholecystokinin and is it peptide YY? Peptide YY
Yep.
is the other one. They only fire when you have fat and protein, and what is a carnivore diet is fat and protein. But
Correct.
I do get full so quickly that I do think there are days I don't eat enough, and I don't try to do OMAD. I'm just if I don't eat till 2 or 3 o'clock, and I have steak and eggs, and I fry the cheese. Have you done the fried cheese? It's in a brick like this. People, you need to find it at your grocery store.
They
It's in
sell
a
it
brick
like
like
that?
this. You slice it into like sticks, and you put it in the skillet and fry it, and it doesn't melt. It is the most amazing thing, but so satisfying that I don't even eat my whole meal. I'm kind of finished, and then I'm not going to eat again late. I mean, I'm not, let's say 6 o'clock. Let's say I want to eat from 3 to 6 or so. I'm not hungry again at 6, so I do go to bed. I mean, I'm fine. Clearly, I'm not withering away. I'm good. But my point is, I can't help but fall into the pattern of OMAD when I do that because it is so satisfying. Do you balance out? Do you think there are days that we all need more nutrition? I don't like to talk about calories, but we need more nutrient dense food. And maybe if I do have a day where I don't eat a lot, the next day, should I start earlier and eat more if I can get it in?
I do think that's the name of the game. I teach this to my Keto Kamp Academy students. I'll help them find out what their protein requirement is based off of their goals and where they're at. And then I tell them, look, that's what I want you to hit most days, but it's okay if you're in a deficit some days because that's pretty much how our cells are designed, feast, famine, cycling. So there's going to be days where we eat an abundance of healthy food, quality food, protein, and we'll be in a caloric surplus, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And then there's days where we're in we're not in a surplus. We're actually in a more of a catabolic state, and that's okay. I think it's a good balance, and I like the idea of mixing things up too, because the body has to continuously adapt. Like a great personal trainer, you go to the gym. Great personal trainers, they have all one thing in common. They all change up their workout routine.
Yeah.
Keeps the body guessing and adapting. So I think we could do the same thing with our nutrition and our feast, famine, cycling.
Do you incorporate fruit into your diet at all?
I do, yeah. So I mean, I go in and out of ketosis. I'm not in ketosis long term because I've done a lot of the work on myself. So I'm able to have fruit. I have a healthy metabolism. Somebody who's more insulin resistant, type 2 diabetic, of course, they would not get away with that. But I do well with fruit. I like fruit. I'm very active. I play a lot of basketball. I have fruit around that as well. So I use it strategically.
Do you follow the glucose goddess in what she says in the food stacking or whatever introduction? So she says eat protein and fat first because you're trying to mitigate insulin, then carbs, and then fruit or dessert at the end.
Yeah, I didn't know she taught that, but
Yeah.
I follow that approach and I teach that. There's a benefit to leaving your carbs, especially fruit at the end. You'll get less of a postprandial glucose spike. So it's like I always tell my students, it's a great dessert, especially like something like cherries. I was just doing, I'm putting together a video on 9 keto fruits you can eat, and like the recommendation of how much you can eat before it kicks you out of ketosis. And cherry's one of them. And cherry would be a great dessert because it also helps you produce melatonin. So something like that would be perfect.
Yeah. Getting raw dairy, if you can find it. I do organic blueberries with raw dairy if I can find it, or I go to the Indian supply store that has Indian yogurt because it's really high in fat and it's really, I think it's really low in sugar. I don't know, but it's not like American yogurt because it's not as sweet. It's, it has the bite to it. And then local dairy. I mean, honey with it but I don't even need that. I mean, but I tell people that just so that they're not gripping on to dear life to me going, how am I going to live without this? So I know that really has worked for me, and it's a great thing to fill that sweet tooth. One thing that I think I've really changed in the last few years was snacking. I've totally eliminated snacking. I don't need to because, again, I eat foods that are so satisfying. But I remember when in my diet brain, because I still have diet brain. I mean, even though I didn't have a lot to lose, I still have diet brain. We were always told, hey, if you're hungry, grab an apple, grab a handful of grapes. And that's the last thing I would tell someone now. Do you have that same philosophy?
Totally. I mean, naked carbs are the worst. If you're going to grab an apple and eat that without any fat or protein, it's like you're going to get a huge glucose spike, especially the 88% of Americans who are metabolically challenged. So you're much better off. If you're going to snack, which I agree, there's no need to snack. If you're eating enough quality food and protein, it's like you're naturally not going to need to snack. But if you are going to snack, protein and fat is your best friend. You're going to have a better glucose response, insulin response. You're not going to get that spike and crash. So I'm totally with you on that.
Miami has really good food, like really good food, and really good fruits, so, and things like that. So I'll give that to you. But on Ben Azadi's birthday, does he have a ribeye with a candle in it and then, butter as your whipped cream? Or do you eat like normal foods like the rest of us for birthday or Christmas?
Here's the two things I don't make an exception on. I never have seed oils knowingly, and I don't have gluten. Outside of that, if it's a celebration, I'll have gelato. I'll have ice cream. I'll have a gluten-free cake with no seed oil. So I will make that exception. It's not the normal, it's an exception, but with seed oils and gluten, I don't do any of those because those will mess me up for a long period of time.
And why? Through like GI distress, inflammation, headache, nausea,
differently, right? For gluten, for example, every time I have gluten, the next at least 4 days, I've got brain fog, joint pain. I just don't digest it well. At least the American hybridized gluten. I haven't tried the gluten in Italy. And then seed oils, I mean, those stick around for, the half-life is estimated to be about 2 years, 680 days. So I know if I had a plate of seed oils, whatever I ate, that's going to be in my body fat for several years. So I don't want to take that hit.
I've noticed, now that we're friends, I can tell you this. I've noticed that gluten makes me toot for a few days. So.
Yep. Same thing. Yep.
Yeah. So I think everybody in my family knows if I have gluten. They're like, Mom. So I've given that up. Okay. When did we start realizing that seed oil is killing us? Because, the American Heart Association recommends you should have 8 tablespoons of canola oil a day or whatever those lies are that are bought and paid for. But when I didn't start hearing about seed oils and how corrupt they were till, I'd say, in the last year. When did this come into that we knew about it?
It's gotten really more popular, you're right, so the last year or so, the last 2 years, more people are posting about it, which is great. I love to see people post about it. For me, it was in 2015 when I started studying Dr. Pompa, who's actually my mentor now, Dr. Daniel Pompa.
Oh, yeah.
He put it on my radar, and then I saw Mercola talking about it.
Yeah.
So it's been on my radar since then, but a lot more research has come out since then. And you're right, the American Heart Association, if you go to your supermarket, they have their stamp of approval. And I brought that up to Dr. Kay Shanahan, and she called the American Heart Association the biggest fake news organization in America.
Totally
That's
agree.
what she said. Because you're right, they're bought and paid for, and they're just getting paid to put that stamp on there. And if you go on TikTok or Instagram, you see all these dietitians and fitness influencers who are telling you that canola oil is totally fine, and they're putting it up as a health food and it lowers your cholesterol, but it's definitely one of the worst things out there. It's worse than sugar. Some experts say it's worse than smoking. It's highly inflammatory. And let me make a point here, because when I asked Dr. Kay Shanahan, I gave her 3 scenarios, Lisa. I said, Dr. Kate, 3 scenarios, which one is worse? Which one is more inflammatory? Which one is going to lead to disease faster? Scenario number 1, somebody smokes cigarettes every day. Scenario number 2, somebody eats processed sugar every single day. And then scenario number 3, somebody eats these seed oils, vegetable oils every single day. Which one's worse, Dr. Kate? And she goes, Ben, that's easy. It's the seed oils. She said, I know. Here's why. She said, when you smoke cigarettes, of course it's not good for you, but once you finish the last puff, the damage has been done. if you eat processed sugar, of course, that's not good for you, especially in excess, but you could exercise. You could burn off that excess glucose. There's ways to deal with that. But when you have these seed oils, they get gunked up, for lack of a better word, in your body fat because they're toxins, and toxins love fat. They go in your body fat for that half-life of 2 years before you actually get rid of them. So I agree with her. They are more detrimental, and they're everywhere. They're at restaurants. What I do, Lisa, if we ever have dinner together, I hope we do soon.
I'm a good
you're
cook.
probably the same way. I tell the waiter or waitress, hey, what oil do you cook your food in? And they're going to tell you it's a soybean or canola. And I say, hey.
And they're so proud of themselves.
And they're so proud. Oh, we have a nice olive oil blend with soybean. I'm
That's
like,
right.
oh. So I say, me and my fiance and everybody at this table, we're allergic to these oils, and we're going to get a
Ding,
reaction.
ding, 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 ding. Then the
Yeah.
manager comes. I just did
Yeah.
this. The manager came out and he goes, man, we need to talk to you. We need to tell you that we use gloves. We don't cross-contaminate. I mean, lawsuit is written all over
That's
the
it.
face going, ah.
That's why you have to
just
use
did
the
it.
word allergic instead of we prefer not to
Yeah.
have it, because
Yep.
then they'll pay attention. And we're not lying. We're all allergic to vegetables.
We are
It's going to
allergic, right.
cause an inflammatory response. But here's the cool thing. I've never had a situation where they said, we can't serve you. We don't have any other options. Get out of our restaurant. They'll either bake it, they'll grill it, or they'll have butter, or they'll have coconut. They'll have some sort of option, but you got to make the request. That's the thing.
Because of the way we eat, and you do too, because when you get old, you're going to get in the car and y'all are going to go places and you're going to have the best time. So my husband and I, after 35 years of marriage, we get in the car and we travel places. So there's usually nothing on the I'm not going to eat fast food, but I can go into a Waffle House now, ask them to cook it in butter or bacon fat. You should see everyone comes over because they're like, we use margarine and seed oil. And I'm like, I know, that's the thing I don't want. And I said, so all we eat are bacon and eggs at Waffle House. Do you need the hash browns? Nope. You need the toast? Nope. Do you need jelly with? Nope. In fact, I order an iced tea and ask for, they don't have heavy cream, they have half and half, and I make my own latte with no sugar. They call it the Lisa at the Russellville Waffle House if anyone wants to go. They
That's
named
brilliant.
it
I love
after
it.
me. So, but it's just funny when you say it, how people go, wait, you don't want margarine? I go, no, because I'd like to see my next birthday. Like I told my
Exactly.
son that time,
It's so common that they think it's like healthy and normal for you, but it's
Yeah.
the exact opposite. I always get asked, Lisa, because there's a lot of, let's face it, there's a lot of conflicting information in our space. Go
Yes,
vegan,
yeah.
go carnivore, go keto, go
Yes.
paleo, whatever it
Yes.
is. And I always get asked, like when I speak on like panels, usually, how do you like cut through the noise and create clarity for people here? Like, how do you know what the right approach is? And here's the best advice that I could give, and I always give this, and I know you align with this. Follow what the government is teaching you when it comes to nutrition and pay close attention, and then just do the exact opposite, and you're going to be healthy. That is a fact.
We say it all the time. Because I think Saladino said that once too. Somebody said it. My husband
Sounds like
said,
something
"That's
you
it."
would say.
Yeah. My husband said, he goes, whatever you've been taught, do the opposite. So, which is, I think in younger people, it's easier for them to see because I was raised, I was on TV and radio in the 80s. So we started a no cholesterol push. My TV station was testing cholesterol, and we were all told to stop eating shrimp and lobster because it was high in cholesterol.
Wow.
So that was immediate push in the 80s. Oh, and we were doing low fat. We had popcorn all day. I bet I tooted all the time then because I now know I have corn. Because the corn we have now is not the corn our grandparents had,
It's true.
So I'm saying I've lived through several iterations or whatever that word is, iterations of life. And yes, of the way our thought life has been. So, but because I can see, I know when I've been lied to. That's why this whole COVID thing was hard for me because I'm like, I'm being lied to. I know that. I'm a journalist. Remember, we ask questions. We go, but no, that's not right. But so I think people in their 20s, like my kids, are totally on board. In fact, my son, obviously my youngest, is also a graduate of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, like I am. She's a vegan, though.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll discuss that another time.
How long has she been a vegan for?
She's a pescatarian.
Okay, that's a little better. How long has
That's
she?
right. 'Cause, I'd say about a year and a half.
Okay. Yeah.
She hasn't even put food in the microwave in 2 years. Like, she doesn't drink alcohol, doesn't smoke. She's a professional model, so she's in with a group of people who are like-minded too.
Got it.
But all that to say, my kids are very open to me when I say things like, I mean, she knows seed oils are going to kill you, because she's had the same schooling and is in that same space. But her peers are more open than when I sit across the table from someone who's my age, a postmenopausal woman, who tells me about the statins they're on and the synthetic hormones they're on. And they're so proud because their doctor prescribed it. And I always say, he wins the trip to Cabo if you buy, what he's selling. It's like the kid that's selling you the Christmas wrapping paper every October. I mean, they win a trip if you sell all the cookies, right? And they're like, what? It's just, it's brainwashing that we have to take their brains and wash it back the other way.
Yep.
So in all these things, that's why I'm saying, I think now, though, what you did in 2008 and you going on your trajectory, your journey, we had the internet, but we didn't have social media influencers. We didn't have a health space. So you were really on your own carving your way. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, it was a totally different ballgame. There was a few podcasts out there. One of them I would listen to would be Underground Wellness by Sean Croxton, was one of the first health podcasts.
Yeah.
And then eventually Ben Greenfield and Dave Asprey came on the scene, but that wasn't until years later. So I learned pretty much by trial and error for myself and then for the clients I was working with. And that there's something to be said for that, because as you know, Lisa, there's one thing that shows the research shows this, and it's cool to look at research and it gives you clues, but then it's different sometimes, maybe a lot of times, when you actually apply it clinically and you're in the trenches, right? So it's not just what the research shows, even if it's compelling research, it's what it looks like when it's actually applied with all these other unique variables. And you're in the trenches like me. I work with a lot of people and I'm looking at lab work. So it's different. So when I see people that I respect, like Huberman and Peter Attia and all these brilliant people, I think one of the things they do wrong, in my just humble opinion, is they just look strategically, just strictly at the research. But when you apply it, it might show a different story. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but there's two things we want to pay attention to: how it looks like clinically, but also what the research shows.
Well, they are PhDs, or Huberman's PhD. Is Peter Attia an MD?
I think he's an MD. Yeah,
an MD. Okay, so there's scientific, of course, and all that science has a financial gain to it. So you have to really, it's nuanced at that point. And that's one thing I learned at IIN and that's what my pescatarian daughter says, bioindividuality. Because, she has complained about an issue and I've said, well, I think, you have too many carbs in your, and she has, I'm trying to think, avocado and fish and quinoa, weird things like quinoa. You should see what she picks out for her. She makes her own side dishes for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and they're just weird. Jackfruit that looks like pork, barbecue. Ugh. But anyway,
have you done a Dutch test on her?
I'm doing mine. I'm doing mine this week first. I may see, because you have to practically sell a kidney to get one of those. They're like $500. She just did the saliva test because I wanted to see what was going on, and it showed me some things that I think I'm a doctor. I'm 12 years away from a degree, but I was right. I think I'm right. She is seeing a naturopath, so at least she's in good hands.
That's great.
But with all this, I do think things are nuanced, and that's what she kind of tells my husband and me. Y'all, bioindividuality, this is working for me. And I go, I think it's because you're 24 and it can work for you. But I think, like with you hit the wall. Dave Asprey, Paul Saladino, I think may have had some vegan roots. But tell me then your transition. What made you run from a vegan diet and embrace more meat?
Well, to your point, it's working for your daughter right now, and it's working for a lot of people maybe who are doing the vegan diet, but eventually it's not going to work. It's not sustainable.
That's what I think, yeah.
There's not one culture in the history of this world that followed any diet long term, not even a keto approach. They kind of went in and out. When they had fruit available, they took advantage of that, but especially a vegan approach. So the fact that she's doing so many things right, you mentioned that she's not really having seed oils and she's eating pretty clean. Mm-hmm. Her stress bucket is pretty low, but eventually it will catch up with her, and it caught up to me. So I was a few months into my vegan diet, which was back 2012-ish. I was feeling great. Actually felt really awesome the first 3 months or so. My training got better, mental clarity. I actually lost some weight because it was the change. The change kind of shocked my body and it had to adapt.
Sure.
But then eventually you hit that vegan wall. And for me, it was about 4 months into it, but I was very dogmatic about it. I told all my friends they have to be vegan. I was touting the China study, which is a very poor book to tout. I didn't understand how to read studies really good back then.
Right.
So I put myself in a box. But then eventually, 15 months into it, I'm like, okay, I have brain fog. I'm gaining weight. I don't feel good hormonally. My workouts are taking me 3 to 4 days to recover. Something seems off. So I did lab work and it verified what I was feeling. So that at that point is where I started to research outside of that vegan box. And that's when I came across Mercola, Dr. Pompa, eventually Dave Asprey, and I started to research on intermittent fasting and keto. And then I fell in love with that. I applied it and I felt really good. And then eventually, a few years later, carnivore was another tool added into my toolbox. But ever since I did keto and intermittent fasting, that was the first time I experienced what true cellular health felt like, outside and inside. And I want that for everybody, right? We could accomplish that. So that was the transition for me from vegan to keto, essentially.
Well, the one compromise that a vegan diet does, I mean, look at, I've used this example before, but Kourtney Kardashian is married to Travis Barker, and they're trying to have a baby. Well, Travis Barker is the size of this pen as a vegan because it's not a robust look.
I didn't know he was a vegan. That makes sense, though.
And they can't have a baby. Have trouble conceiving because what it does to compromise your sex hormones, because for one thing, it probably does drop your cholesterol, which I love my high cholesterol because you know what? My sex hormones sing to each other.
Yeah.
And her ability to conceive and his ability not to fire blanks. I mean, if we're talking about it on a cellular level, on a sperm level. So what you probably saw was when you did your first lab work, was your testosterone low?
Very low. It was I was 20. How old was I? No, I was, let's see, 2012. I was probably like 28 years old and 27, 28. My total testosterone was around a little under 300 total.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what is it now?
I don't know. The last time I checked, I think it was like 600 and something.
You doubled
but that was
it, though.
About a year ago. I'm due for another one.
But you doubled it, and that...
Yeah, tripled it. Yeah.
Okay. We know
almost,
the science.
Yeah, I guess doubled. Yeah.
Of what meat does just to your testosterone.
Eating cholesterol,
Yes.
So like you said, it builds your sex hormones. I'm more concerned with somebody under 200 total cholesterol than
Me too.
over it. I mean, over is important to be over 200.
And do you know how many physicians put gold stars beside people's names when it's 179, 184? And I go, oh, so you want dementia? They're like, wait, what? No, you... Please stop. Stop with of course, our feeling on statins. I mean, I could go on and on. Just killer drugs. We have killer drugs. So what kind of health provider do you see? I know you probably don't go often, but would you see a functional medicine doctor if something, if you thought your gallbladder, I mean, if you had a gallbladder attack or you had a sore throat, or do you see a naturopath?
So I'm kind of blessed because in my group, I mentioned Dr. Pompa's my mentor, and then we have a group. There's about 47 doctors in there, from chiropractors to medical doctors to naturopaths to biological dentists. So I reach out to them if I have an issue or a question. But other than that, if it's not anything serious, I run all my lab work on myself. I do tests on myself. I'm due to do another set of lab work and a Dutch test very soon. So I pretty much am my own kind of health detective.
Oh, I've been my own doctor for years. Yeah. I titrate my own thyroid medicine. I tell them what I need. And every time they go, well, that's pretty good. I go, I've been doing the research. So again, because no one can be an advocate for Lisa Fisher like Lisa Fisher,
that's right.
Or Ben Azadi like Ben Azadi. So that's how I want people to look at themselves, is not to be, it's to be skeptical and going in. But no, I'm not combative. I listen, but sometimes I will say, that's if I have to see somebody who's not my regular functional medicine. I go to a nurse practitioner for my thyroid and my bioidentical hormone replacement. So it's a great place to be. Definitely Google nurse practitioner, bioidentical hormones in your area, and look for the ones that take insurance. That's the other benefit. You can do that. Now, I love Saladino talks about how he reversed his eczema. Joe Rogan, through carnivore, Joe Rogan reversed his vitiligo, and that's what I'm working on right now, is
wow.
repigmenting my vitiligo. I have.
Have you noticed the difference?
Yes, I have two new olive. I've Russian Jewish descent, so I really have olive skin. It's just so fair because I have no pigment on my face, but I have two new little brown spots, and they're not old lady brown spots because I'm not having that, but they're actual pigment, and so I have new pigment on my hands. You can barely see, but I have little dots. Again, I'm 60. I'll be here another 35 years tormenting everybody. I've got time. I'm not in a hurry.
That is so cool.
For the things that I have to cover, I have TV makeup. For people like me that have to have the thicker makeup, I use things for when I do TV stuff, Dermablend, and I cover it, and nobody knows. Nobody knows on my face for sure. So what are some things? Well, you can kind of sometimes see, but again, I've covered it. You can see on my neck there. There's like
such a power to like the human body, the adaptability of the human body. You remove the interference and it goes to heal, and that's a perfect example. Your vitiligo.
Yeah, right. Exactly. What did you reverse? Now, obviously, mental conditions, we know by everything Perlmutter has said and all the research about what wheat and gluten and carbs do for depression, anxiety, and even schizophrenia. You remove gluten and people's schizophrenia dissipates. So besides your mental situation, did you have skin issues, GI distress, anything that you reversed?
Yeah, I actually, so my history is unique because I did a lot of damage when I used to eat just junk food and I was obese. But then I also got, I had 8 silver fillings in my mouth, silver amalgam fillings for 20 plus years. I got them in as a kid. So I had mercury poisoning from that. I know. And then the home I lived in, previous home, had mold, hidden black mold. So I had mold poisoning, mercury poisoning, and then my health was kind of coming to a screeching halt until I took care of that. So I went to a biological dentist who I go to. That's one practitioner that I do visit often, my biological dentist.
Oh, good.
Got the fillings out, detoxed the mercury, got out of the moldy home, detoxed the mold, took care of that. But then something that has reoccurred over the last 15 years or so has been an autoimmune condition. Raynaud's. Are you familiar with Raynaud's, Lisa?
Yeah. My mother-in-law had it.
Your mother-in-law had it. Yeah. So that's something that I've had for many, many years. And it was really bad to the point where, like, I remember I was hiking in Washington State 5 or 6 years ago at this place called Snow Lake Mountain. And then I polar plunged into the lake there, and it was super cold and it felt really great. But I didn't realize how bad my Raynaud's was. And I got out of that polar plunge and I looked at my fingers, and from the tip of my fingers all the way to my wrist was completely white, no blood flow. I couldn't even like do this. I couldn't even squeeze my fingers. So I thought I was going to lose my fingers. I had to find, because nobody was around there. So I saw, thank God, people that were hiking far away, and I yelled for them, and they had a lighter, and I held a lighter underneath my fingers to kind of get the blood flow back. And that was before I detoxed the mercury, the molds. And then after I detoxed the mercury and the mold, all that got much better. But I was still getting flare-ups with my Raynaud's, maybe every couple of times per month with the Raynaud's flare-up. And then I have another condition, and I always forget the name, but it's kind of the opposite of Raynaud's, where the fingers get really hot and inflamed. It's another autoimmune condition. Anyways, what carnivore did for that was really interesting, because the first time I did a carnivore was 3 years ago, where I decided, okay, hearing cool things about carnivore, I want to teach it to my students. I want to create a portal for a pillar for it in my portal that I teach my students, but I got to do it first before I could teach them. So I did 40 days of carnivore, where on day 1, before I even started it, I did comprehensive lab work, full thyroid panel, inflammatory markers, hormones, C-reactive protein, just all the good stuff. And then on day 40, I did the same panel, but I also wanted to see how I felt and what it did for my Raynaud's flare-ups throughout the 40 days. And throughout those 40 days, I only had 2 small Raynaud's flare-ups throughout those 40 days, which was a huge, huge improvement for me. And it really was like, wow, this is really cool what it did for my autoimmune. And ever since then, it's gotten so much better, and I'm really determined to get it to the point where I never get a Raynaud's flare-up. Now I'll get one maybe once every other month, or maybe if I'm really like mentally stressed, it might flare it up, but it's now not common, and that's super cool. And that's what carnivore can do. That's what it can do to reset your gut. It did that for me. So now I do carnivore 30 to 40 days straight, 3 or 4 times a year. I'm going to do it with my students January 1st to January 30th. I think it's
World
fantastic
Carnivore
tool.
Month.
What?
Yes. It's World Carnivore Month.
That's exactly
January.
it. So it's perfect timing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's perfect. What's the longest fast you've done?
5-day water fast.
Yeah. I did 5 days this summer. It wasn't fun. Like I didn't start doing herkies and backflips like people are like on day 4. I wanted to, climb Everest.
I didn't feel like that either. No.
In fact, I was in the middle. It was time for me to, I think, have pellet therapy, and she was testing my lab work, my provider, and my glucose was 52 that morning, and I was saying
mine got to 52 as well. That's funny.
That's low.
But
I
your
don't care
ketones were
what
up.
you say. What's that?
But did you check your ketones?
No, I didn't think to do that. I was looking at fasting insulin, and my fasting insulin normally is about 2.2, but it was 1.1. It was really low. It looked like my pancreas might not work, but it does. That was just
that was day 5 of the fast?
That was day 4.
Day 4, yeah. So my glucose dropped to 52 as well at the lowest on day 5, but my ketones were like 5.4. So looking at that for me, I wasn't concerned because my body was running on the ketones. But that is low glucose. But as long as the ketones are surging, that's totally fine.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure they were. And it's funny, people ask, like I do monthly Zoom calls for my fasting clients. And I don't like really telling that story because I don't want them to think that's what they should be doing. But I did have what my doctor thought was a precancerous colon polyp. It was not. It was benign. And so I did it to kick use autophagy and kick the sick cells to the curb. So I did it kind of prophylactically. I was on, when you're having a colonoscopy and an upper GI, you're on day 2 just about, or I have to be because I have a rare swallowing disorder. I have a motility issue. So I have to do longer fasting before I even do any of those tests. So I was on day 2. And my husband said, you might as well go to day 5 as he's eating a burger and fries, But he was right. He said, you might as well do it because the doctor came out and said, that looked a little suspicious to me just with the naked eye. He's such a liar. No, he wasn't. I mean, he really thought that. And then he came back and said, it was fine. It was benign and you healthy colon and all that. So I did it at that point. I thought, might as well. And that's why the only reason I even tell my clients is if they've said, have you done a long fast, or what are the benefits of autophagy? And we know that it's the cellular clean out. And we know that even some smart oncologists now are saying, you've got cancer Monday. Hey, don't eat again until Friday. Let's look at your markers. It's amazing. Your CRP's down, all these things. So I did it as biohacking and a test on myself. Will I do it again? Probably once a year. I might do a 3-day fast.
It's great.
Because I do think the benefits of autophagy are so great for everything. But the funny thing is, and I know you felt the same way, I wasn't starving at all. I mean, could I have eaten? Yeah, but it wasn't the hunger. Mine really at that point was the energy level. I did stay at my nurse practitioner's that day, and we did an IV. So I did IV therapy just to give me a little boost. Again, no cartwheels, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't swimming in the English Channel. But I was fine. I was totally fine. But my husband was the one who kept reading. He'd come in like wherever I was. He goes, I just read, but by day 4, you're going to feel great. And I went, you've lied to me every day of this. So
everybody has a different experience with a long fast. I also, energy was low. I was just like in this deep healing state where I didn't touch. And benefits are amazing, to your point. I think doing that once a year, 3 to 5 days, is a great protocol for everybody.
Yeah, and what I did, it was the middle of July. We have hot summers here. I know you're in Miami going, you have no idea, but we do have hot, humid summers.
Where are you?
And so, in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay.
It's humid. But during that time, I rested. And I'm not a resty kind of person, but because it was hot and I didn't have the energy to do all the things I did, I still do TV work for people. I'm trying to think. Oh, it was my TV work was the next day after I got to put food on a fork. So I was so happy. And I did, my meal to refeed was like watermelon because I wanted something with, I guess, the glucose. I mean, I was thirsty. Like I felt thirsty. Like my thirst, if I could have my thirst quenched, I would have felt better. I think I did watermelon and maybe yogurt. What did you? Because that's a pivotal point. Some people have bad GI distress. I did not because I think I was gentle. And then I wasn't carnivore yet, but I still probably had mild foods. What did you do to open your feasting window again.
Yeah, well, to your point, if you're going to do a long fast, it's very important to break the fast very strategically, low and slow. I have a video on my YouTube channel on a 2-day structure on how to break a block fast, and it's based off of how much you weigh, and it gives you what foods to eat, how much protein, etc. But what happens is during a long fast, you're starving down all this bacteria in your gut, HCl goes down, stomach enzymes go down. And if you break it on day 3 or day 5 with all this food, it's like you don't have the enzymes to break it down. Right.
I can see that. Yeah.
So you could always supplement with enzymes. Yeah, that might help, but it's always good to go low and slow. So having some watermelon, which is a soft food, and some yogurt, soft food, that's great.
Yeah.
Steamed veggies, if you do veggies, steamed veggies, avocado, like boiled eggs. Those are good things to do it, to break your long fast with, and you ease into it. And it should be a 2-day protocol if you're doing a 5-day fast or longer. And on my YouTube channel, I have a flip chart where I kind of write it all out for you.
Okay, we're going to get to your, all your social media in a minute because it's fantastic. All that will be linked in the show notes. Everything about Ben, baby pictures, his first
I'm going to send all my baby photos to you.
That's right. We're not going to do all that. With your fasting protocol, so now with fasting protocol, what supplements do you think are really important to or tandem or to go along with that? Because maybe we do miss some things when we fast. I really don't feel like I do, but I do love me some Bioptimizers, Magnesium Breakthrough.
Yeah.
And I would say that's my number one, very favorite. But what are some things you like that are a part of your life?
For fasting specifically?
Yeah, people who are fasting.
Yeah. Magnesium
any supplements.
Yeah, magnesium is a great idea for somebody who fasts because it's a very important mineral. So yeah, magnesium, I would throw that into the mix. Bioptimizers I love their breakthrough. Electrolytes in general, like sea salt, maybe some Redmond's, Relight or Element, either way is good. Those are awesome. If somebody's really like neurotoxic and they have a lot of toxins and they do a longer fast, they might get a big dump of toxins and they might feel awful because toxins hide out in our body fat. And when you fast, you start to use body fat for energy and those toxins get dumped. So I've seen a lot of people who are very toxic feel very awful. So they would use binders. They would use strong binders. I like a product called Cyto Detox and Bind from Systemic Formulas. And then another one, which I think would benefit everybody who does a long fast or any kind of fast, would be hydrogen water. Would be a great thing to add into the mix. It actually could assist autophagy. It's a selective antioxidant.
Oh, so that's not a racket. You know, I remember people kind of selling it at the beginning. I saw it at my gym.
Oh, you're thinking about alkaline water, no?
Wait, I've seen that one too. That's a total racket.
That's a racket.
I'm
not talking about alkaline water. Yeah.
No, I saw one time at our gym, one of the guys said, I've got hydrogen water. And I remember thinking, because I poo-pooed after the alkaline water, I knew that was a racket. Then I put them all in the racket category.
Yeah, no,
but
hydrogen
you like
is legit.
Hydrogen.
There's a great website. What is it? It is hydrogenstudies.com. Hydrogenstudies.com. Let me just verify that real quick. Yeah, hydrogenstudies.com. There's about 1,235 studies there on hydrogen. Humans, animals. Okay. It's legit. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. No, the alkaline water is for $5,000. You can nothing. You can drink water.
It's actually going to create more gut dysbiosis. You don't want to make your gut alkaline. It's acidic. So yeah, I'm not a fan of like Kangen and those alkaline waters.
Yeah, right. I heard Asprey talk about that. Now let's talk about, so you were also an early adopter of the benefits of social media, of doing online courses. I'm kind of dipping my toe in that. I should have my online course. Should be ready soon. But what are the first things you did and what made you think this is really going to work? Because it's really worked.
Well, I mean, YouTube, I think YouTube is the name of the game. If you're going to choose one platform, social media-wise, to focus on, I would still choose YouTube to this day. Okay. Now, TikTok is hot, and it's growing. It might even get banned. Who knows?
That's what I think.
Probably will get banned.
Yeah.
But YouTube is here to stay. Unfortunately, these are necessary evils. Like Google is a necessary evil, and Google owns YouTube, and it's a very big search engine. So I would focus on YouTube, creating quality, consistent content on YouTube, to then take your audience, your community that you've built and served, to your email list by giving them some guide, a free, amazing guide that serves them, 12 pages or less, and then you serve them on your email list. And then if you have a course that you could take that education further, that would be the progression. Then you take them on a webinar or just directly to the email to the course.
Okay. Darren is off screen, but he's listening and taking notes feverishly because that's
cool.
that's how you get paid the big bucks with me. I don't blame him. He does more for me than I could ever imagine.
Darren's awesome.
Ben, you're terrific. I love your message. I love your enthusiasm for life. Now, tell me about your relationship now, because the girl broke up with you, and I hate her with all my heart. So tell me about the girl now. Do we like her?
Well, I don't hate the previous one. I actually I'm still in communication with her, and I actually thank her all the time because she made the right decision. And
that's a good point.
And
that's
it all worked out. You know, back then
it allowed you to put the search engine on your own heart and see where you had flaws. I take it back.
But back then, believe me, I was pretty pissed off and angry. But
right.
Now I'm thankful for all of that. My fiance Natasha is wonderful. We've been together now for 7 years. She lives with me. She's in the other room here, and we have a great relationship. She's wonderful. She works from home. She travels a lot with me when I speak all over the world, and we travel a lot in general. So it's just a blessing to have her in my life.
And you're still in communication. Your mother's still alive.
My mom lives right down the street from me. I have every Thursday I have dinner with her. She's amazing. Yeah.
Does she still cook Persian foods?
Yes, all the time. My favorite.
Tell me what she made like last week, because I love Persian food.
So last week it wasn't Persian. It was salmon and rice. But she's gonna make Persian food this Sunday for Christmas, and she's gonna make something called fusinjun. Have you heard of fusinjun before? So fusinjun is a traditional Persian meal. It's my favorite Persian meal, where it's like a whole chicken, organic whole chicken, cooked in a pot with this pomegranate walnut sauce, and it's absolutely delicious.
Oh my gosh. Now, that's kind of a grainy culture with foods, whether it's couscous or rice, naan bread. So what are the choices you will eat from that region?
Well, I mean,
hummus,
on I call it a keto flex day, which is a higher carb day for me. I would have the white rice. So I have the white rice with that fusinjun. She makes a lot of kebab too, which is meat, great for carnivore.
Right.
I don't do the lentils. I don't do beans in general. She'll make lentils a lot. I don't do that.
Right.
She makes like a cucumber salad, which I don't eat. I don't eat couscous. So yeah, I'm really selective, and she knows my preference now over the years.
Have you ever traveled to Israel?
No, not yet.
Because I'm going next year, and that's one thing, because it's similar food. I mean, obviously, it is the Middle East, these similar foods. And so I've already thought about, what am I going to eat? Because food, I'm all about food. That's the greatest part
the same
about
way.
Yeah, that's the greatest part about being a carnivore. She plans the whole trip based off of that. Yes, totally. I start daydreaming about, what am I going to eat? Because here's what fasting has taught me. And Jen Stevens coined the phrase of being window worthy, which of course is a Seinfeld sponge worthy. It's from the sponge.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that episode.
The same. Yes, I love that episode. But it's the same thing. I'm not going to waste my time on something I don't completely love because I get full so easily. I don't need a lot. I'd rather foods that are dense, nutritionally dense foods, high nutrition density with that, and to enjoy it. So that's why I'm really picky about what I eat. And
smart.
I remember when I first started intermittent fasting, I was still on the radio, and that's when, you're at the station at dark 30, 5 in the morning, doing the morning show, and people that would come on your radio show always brought food, right? They always brought breakfast or cupcakes, because we were like animals at the zoo. They wanted to feed us. And, forever I would eat it because I ate every 3 hours, and by then it was time to eat again. But then when I started intermittent fasting, I would take the treat and I would take it home. Like my grandmother, when she would take the salt and pepper and the ketchup from the table, I would take it home and I would unwrap it after I had whatever my meal was. So I love food more now, and I am a home cook.
It's great.
And I've even taught cooking classes. So I do Indian foods. I really love Indian food and some other things because I really appreciate all the flavors, all the things.
Yeah, my fiance is very similar. Very similar.
Yeah.
Lisa, I hate to do this, but I'm late for my other interview.
Okay, you're the best. Okay, I'm hanging up. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. You're wonderful. I enjoyed it so much.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.